The first rays of dawn crept over Willow Creek Estates, casting long shadows across a landscape that screamed suburban perfection. Each house stood like a carefully arranged chess piece, identical roof lines, synchronized landscaping, mailboxes positioned with military precision. But perfection, Marcus Rodriguez knew, was always an illusion. His midnight black Ford F-250 rolled down Sycamore Lane, its massive tires barely making a sound against the freshly sealed asphalt. At 42, Marcus moved with a grace that belied his muscular frame, a predator's grace honed through 15 years of DEA service in some of the most dangerous corners of the world. His left hand, partially hidden by a faded DEA baseball cap, bore a thin scar that traced from his wrist to his knuckles, a souvenir from a close encounter with a Sinaloa cartel enforcer 3 years ago in Culiacan. The ranch was his sanctuary, 10 acres of carefully maintained land that stood out like a defiant fist against the cookie-cutter conformity of Willow Creek Estates, where other properties boasted uniform street Augustine grass cut to exactly 2.5 inches. Marcus's landscape told a different story. Native wildflowers danced between carefully positioned security zones. Strategically placed trees offered natural surveillance points. To the untrained eye, it looked like a meticulously maintained property. To someone like Marcus, it was an operational canvas. He pulled into the driveway, the truck's engine purring to a halt. Before stepping out, his eyes scanned the surroundings, a habit ingrained from years of undercover work. The neighbor's curtains twitched. Mrs. Peterson, retired elementary school teacher, always watching. 2 houses down, a sprinkler system erupted with mathematically precise timing. The mailbox caught his attention. A bright yellow envelope stood out like a warning flag against the muted colors of the morning. Another HOA violation notice. Marcus chuckled, a low, dangerous sound that would have made his former cartel informants nervous. The HOA violated notice was a joke compared to the threats he'd faced in the field. Karen Henderson's latest missive detailed 3 infractions. His lawn chair was precisely 2 inches outside the designated outdoor furniture zone. His trash cans remained visible 17 minutes past the mandated collection time, and the trim paint on his ranch house was 0.03 shades darker than the approved sandstone whisper color. He remembered his first encounter with Karen 6 months after moving in. A widow in her late 50s, with hair permanently set in a helmet-like gray perm and bifocals that seemed designed for maximum judgmental potential. Her clipboard was her weapon, municipal codes her ammunition. Mr. Rodriguez, she had announced during his first HOA meeting, this community has standards. Marcus had simply raised an eyebrow. Standards. He knew about standards, the kind that kept you alive in a world where one wrong move meant death. The standards of Willow Creek Estates seemed laughably insignificant compared to the life-or-death protocols he'd navigated in cartel territories. But Karen was persistent. Each month brought a new violation notice, a flower bed 2 inches beyond the permitted border, a garden gnome placed at an unauthorized angle. The precision of her complaints was almost impressive, if they weren't so monumentally ridiculous. What Karen didn't know was that Marcus's ranch was more than just a home. It was a carefully constructed operational base, strategically selected for its location and potential. The seemingly random landscaping, designed for optimal surveillance, the misplaced lawn furniture, perfectly positioned communication points. His current investigation ran deeper than Karen could ever imagine. A money laundering network that had embedded itself into the most unexpected places, suburban real estate developments just like Willow Creek Estates. Marcus grabbed the violation notice, sliding it into a secure file folder. Every single communication from the HOA was meticulously documented, not for Karen's purposes, but as potential intelligence markers. Patterns emerged in the most unexpected places, and Karen's obsessive documentation might just provide the missing piece to his ongoing investigation. The morning sun continued its climb, burning away the last vestiges of night. Marcus knew this day would be different. The tension had been building, a slow burn that was about to ignite. Little did Karen know, she was about to play a far more significant role in his investigation than she could ever comprehend. The suburban battlefield was about to become very interesting. With a final scan of the horizon, Marcus Rodriguez walked into his ranch. Another day in the most unexpected war zone had begun. Karen Henderson's home office was a testament to bureaucratic precision. 3-ring binders lined custom-built shelves, each meticulously labeled with years of HOA records. Color-coded tabs separated violations, meeting minutes, and community correspondence. At 57, she had transformed neighborhood management into an art form, or more accurately, a military operation. Her late husband, Gerald, had been a mid-level department store manager who lived and died by corporate regulations. When he passed 5 years ago, Karen channeled her grief into the one place she could exercise absolute control, the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association. The morning sun filtered through perfectly pressed curtains as she reviewed Marcus Rodriguez's file. Again, her reading glasses, bifocals with a thin gold chain, perched precariously on the tip of her nose. Each page was annotated in precise blue ink, margins filled with observations that would make a forensic accountant proud. Something about Marcus Rodriguez didn't add up. Background check. Exemplary. DEA agent with multiple commendations. No criminal record. Property taxes paid promptly. And yet, something felt off. She circled another observation in her notebook. Late-night arrivals, unmarked vehicles, unusual hours of operation. The property seemed more like a base of operations than a simple suburban home. Karen had always prided herself on maintaining the pristine reputation of Willow Creek Estates. When the development was first constructed 15 years ago, it was marketed as the ultimate suburban dream, a gated community where property values remained consistently high, where children played safely on manicured streets, where every lawn was a canvas of perfection. Marcus Rodriguez was a disruption to that carefully maintained ecosystem. His ranch stood as an anomaly. 10 acres that seemed to follow a different set of rules entirely. Native plants instead of uniform landscaping. Strategic tree placements that seemed more tactical than decorative. Surveillance equipment that was just slightly more sophisticated than standard home security. She pulled out a folder labeled Rodriguez Observations and began reviewing her documented infractions. The list was comprehensive. May 15th, lawn chair positioned 2.3 inches outside designated outdoor furniture zone. June 3rd, trash cans remained visible 17 minutes post-collection. July 12th, exterior trim paint 0.03 shades darker than approved sandstone whisper. August 8th, unidentified vehicle with tinted windows parked overnight. Each violation was photographed, dated, and annotated. Karen approached these infractions with the dedication of a detective building a case. In her mind, Rodriguez wasn't just breaking HOA rules. He was challenging the very fabric of community order. Her phone buzzed. A text from Barbara Jensen, her closest ally on the HOA board. Heard Rodriguez is causing trouble again. Want me to dig deeper? Karen hesitated. She wasn't one for gossip, but something about Rodriguez triggered her investigative instincts. She typed back, gather information, discreetly. The irony was lost on her. A retired schoolteacher turned HOA president, conducting what amounted to an amateur surveillance operation on a federal agent, all in the name of community standards. What Karen didn't know was that every move she made, every violation notice she drafted, every late-night observation, Marcus was watching, not out of paranoia, but as part of a much larger, more complex investigation that stretched far beyond the manicured borders of Willow Creek Estates. Her determination was about to collide with a world she could never comprehend. Federal operations, international money laundering, high-stakes investigations. These were concepts that existed far beyond her meticulously organized binders and color-coded tabs. Karen Henderson was playing a game she didn't understand against an opponent who was several moves ahead, and she was about to make her first critical mistake. The Willow Creek Community Center buzzed with a low-level tension that had nothing to do with the lukewarm coffee and stale donuts. Monthly HOA meetings were typically a bland affair, a gathering of retirees and work-from-home professionals with nothing better to do than debate the intricacies of landscaping regulations and garbage can placement. Tonight was different. Marcus Rodriguez arrived precisely at 7:00 p.m., his sixth HOA frame filling the doorway of the community center's multipurpose room. He wore pressed khakis and a crisp blue button-down, deliberately casual, yet with an edge that suggested he could switch from suburban resident to federal agent in milliseconds. The room fell silent. Karen Henderson sat at the head of the table, her gray hair perfectly coiffed, reading glasses perched on the tip of her nose like a weapon of bureaucratic destruction. To her left sat Barbara Jensen, her most loyal board member, and to her right, Harold Whitmore, a retired accountant who took municipal codes as seriously as he once took tax audits. Item number 7, Karen announced, her voice cutting through the room like a razor, continued violations at 1247 Sycamore Lane, the Rodriguez property. Marcus shifted in his chair. The cheap folding seat groaned under his weight, a subtle reminder that he didn't quite fit into this carefully managed ecosystem. His eyes, green, intense, carrying the weight of countless undercover operations, swept the room with a calculated calm that made several board members uncomfortable. Barbara leaned forward, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. 5 separate violations this month alone. Trash cans, lawn furniture, exterior paint. It's like he's deliberately challenging our community standards. Harold nodded, adjusting his thick-rimmed glasses. In my day, we respected neighborhood protocols. These rules exist for a reason. Marcus said nothing. Not yet. Karen continued her litany of complaints, each violation read with the dramatic flair of a prosecutor presenting damning evidence. A lawn chair 2 inches out of place. Trash cans visible 17 minutes past collection time. Paint trim 0.03 shades darker than the approved sandstone whisper color. The absurdity was not lost on him. He remembered interrogation rooms in Bogota, negotiations with cartel middlemen in Juarez. Compared to those high-stakes encounters, this suburban showdown was almost comical. Almost. Mr. Rodriguez, Karen finally addressed him directly, her voice trembling with righteous indignation. Your property continues to be a consistent source of concern for our community standards. A beat of silence. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Fascinating, he replied, his voice a low, controlled rumble that made several board members shift uncomfortably. I wasn't aware that a 2-inch deviation in lawn chair placement constituted a threat to national security. Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Karen's face flushed crimson. What none of them knew was the true purpose behind Marcus's seemingly deliberate infractions. Each violation notice, each documented mistake, was a carefully constructed piece of intelligence gathering. The ranch was more than a home. It was an operational base for an investigation that ran deeper than these suburban warriors could possibly imagine. Money laundering networks didn't just exist in cartel compounds or back alley exchanges. Sometimes they hid in plain sight, behind HOA regulations, property management companies, and meticulously maintained suburban developments. And Marcus Rodriguez was about to blow it all wide open. The meeting continued, a battlefield of passive-aggressive warfare, clipboard versus federal training, municipal codes versus years of undercover experience. Neither side was ready to back down. The digital wall map in the secure basement of the DEA field office looked like something from a spy movie. Colored pins, interconnected with red strings, created a complex web of financial transactions that stretched across 3 states. At the center of this intricate network sat one seemingly innocuous location, Willow Creek Estates. Marcus Rodriguez stood before the map, his fingers tracing the carefully plotted connections. What appeared to be a standard suburban development was actually a sophisticated money laundering operation that made the cartels look like amateurs. Real estate had always been the perfect front for illegal financial activities. Property values, complex ownership structures, and legitimate-looking transactions provided the perfect camouflage for moving dirty money. Willow Creek Estates was the crown jewel of this particular operation. The investigation had begun 6 months ago, triggered by an anomaly in property transfer records. A series of homes had changed hands with suspicious frequency, each sale slightly over market value, each transaction leaving behind a trail of carefully obscured financial breadcrumbs. Marcus's current assignment wasn't just about tracking money. It was about dismantling an entire underground financial network that had been operating with surgical precision for years. His ranch wasn't just a home, it was a strategic operational base. The seemingly random landscaping, carefully designed surveillance points, the misaligned lawn furniture, communication nodes, even the HOA violations served a purpose, creating a smokescreen of normalcy while gathering critical intelligence. Karen Henderson and her obsessive documentation had become an unexpected ally. Her meticulous record-keeping provided additional layers of intelligence that even the most sophisticated forensic accountants would struggle to connect. A secure phone buzzed. Agent Elena Ramirez, his primary contact on the operation, was on the line. "We've got movement," she said, her voice low and controlled. "3 properties on Maple Drive show identical financial signatures from last quarter. It's connected to the shell company we've been tracking." Marcus pulled up the digital files. Ownership chains that twisted like DNA strands. Shell companies nested within shell companies. On the surface, everything looked legitimate. But to a trained eye, the patterns were unmistakable. The operation targeted a specific vulnerability in suburban real estate markets. Properties would be purchased slightly above market value, with funding that appeared to come from legitimate sources. Mortgage applications carefully crafted, documentation meticulously prepared. Each transaction was a piece of an elaborate money laundering puzzle. What made Willow Creek Estates particularly interesting was its demographics. A mix of retired professionals, work-from-home entrepreneurs, and mid-level corporate employees. People with financial sophistication, but without the time or inclination to dig too deeply into neighborhood real estate transactions. Perfect camouflage. Marcus understood the irony. Karen Henderson, with her clipboard and HOA regulations, was actually providing an additional layer of protection for the very operation he was trying to expose. Her obsessive focus on minor infractions created the perfect smokescreen of suburban normalcy. The digital map continued to pulse with information. Financial trails, property transfers, communication logs, each pin represented a potential breakthrough. "We're close," Marcus muttered to himself, studying the interconnected web of transactions. Close to what, exactly, remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. Willow Creek Estates was about to become ground zero for one of the most sophisticated financial takedowns in recent DEA history. And Karen Henderson, with her HOA violations and meticulously maintained community standards, had no idea she was sitting at the epicenter of an investigation that would shake the foundations of suburban financial crime. The game was about to change, and Marcus Rodriguez was ready. The duplicate key felt heavy in Karen Henderson's hand. She had obtained it through Harold Whitmore, a board member with connections to the property management company. Just for emergency purposes, he'd said with a wink, but Karen knew better. This wasn't about emergencies. This was about uncovering the truth about Marcus Rodriguez. Dawn had barely broken when she pulled into the Rodriguez property, her silver Lexus hybrid. A retirement gift to herself, looked absurdly out of place against the rugged landscape of the ranch. Karen's hands trembled slightly as she approached the side entrance. Years of following rules, of maintaining order, had prepared her for this moment of rebellion. The lock clicked open with surprising ease. Inside, the ranch was nothing like she expected. Most of the house seemed deliberately sparse, almost staged. Neutral colors, minimal furniture. But Karen knew how to look beyond the surface. Her first stop was Marcus's home office. File cabinets stood like sentinels, their gunmetal gray finish reflecting the morning light. Most would see nothing unusual, but Karen Henderson had spent decades sorting, categorizing, and investigating. She knew how to look. She began systematically going through drawers, bank statements, property records, communication logs. Each document received the same meticulous examination she applied to HOA violation reports. What she didn't realize was that every single movement was being captured. High-resolution cameras, strategically placed throughout the ranch, recorded her every action. Infrared sensors tracked her path. Motion detectors logged her precise movements. What Karen believed was a covered investigation was actually walking directly into a carefully constructed trap. She found her first anomaly 30 minutes into her search, a series of property transfer documents that seemed unusual. Shell companies, interconnected ownership structures, the kind of paperwork that would make a forensic accountant's heart race. One file caught her particular attention. A property transfer document for a home in Willow Creek Estates, her own community, with some peculiar financial markers. Karen didn't understand the full significance, but her investigative instincts were firing. Something wasn't right. She began photographing documents. Her hands, usually steady from years of grading school papers and managing HOA records, now shook with a mixture of excitement and fear. This was more than just a violation. This was something bigger. What Karen didn't know was that Marcus Rodriguez had been waiting for someone exactly like her to make this move. The documents she was photographing were carefully constructed decoys, breadcrumbs designed to lead investigators down a specific path. While she thought she was uncovering a conspiracy, she was actually becoming a critical piece of a much larger operational strategy. Her phone buzzed. A text from Barbara Jensen. "Everything okay? You've been gone a while." Karen ignored it. She was too close to something big. As she continued her search, she failed to notice the subtle changes in the room. Microscopic tracking devices were being activated. Digital footprints were being logged. Every photo she took, every document she moved, was being analyzed in real time by a federal database thousands of miles away. She was playing a game she didn't understand, against an opponent who had already calculated her every potential move. When Marcus Rodriguez had first moved into Willow Creek Estates, he knew it would take someone like Karen to provide the final piece of his investigation. Obsessive, detail-oriented, willing to cross lines in pursuit of what she believed was right. The irony was perfect. The very person trying to expose him was about to become his most valuable asset. Karen Henderson had just made the most significant mistake of her life, and she had no idea. The secure communication room at the DEA's regional headquarters hummed with electronic precision. Multiple screens flickered with data streams, each one capturing a fragment of the operation that had been months in the making. Agent Elena Ramirez stood before the primary monitoring station, her dark eyes scanning the incoming data with laser-like focus. The intrusion at Marcus Rodriguez's ranch was more than just a simple break-in. It was an unexpected variable that could either derail or accelerate their entire investigation. "Talk to me." Marcus's voice came through the encrypted communication line, calm and controlled. Elena pulled up the digital forensics report. She's been in the house for 47 minutes, photographed 63 specific documents, triggered 17 separate tracking protocols we embedded in the decoy files. The brilliance of their setup was now coming to fruition. Every document Karen had touched was a carefully constructed piece of intelligence. Some were genuine, some were deliberate plants. All were now being analyzed by the most sophisticated forensic algorithms the DEA could deploy. Marcus's current assignment wasn't just about tracking money. It was about dismantling a complex financial network that had been operating with surgical precision for years. Willow Creek Estates wasn't just a suburban development. It was the perfect front for a money laundering operation that stretched across 3 states. "We're tracking her digital footprint," Elena continued. "Cell phone pings, vehicle GPS, credit card transactions. She's creating a trail that's going to be impossible to erase." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Karen Henderson, the overzealous HOA president who thought she was investigating Marcus, had just become the most valuable intelligence asset in their operation. On another screen, a complex algorithm began mapping the connections: property transfers, financial transactions, communication logs. Each piece of data Karen had inadvertently photographed was now being cross-referenced with years of accumulated intelligence. "She doesn't know it," Marcus said, a rare hint of amusement in his voice, "but she's just walked into the most sophisticated trap we've ever constructed." The operation had its roots in a seemingly mundane investigation that began 6 months earlier. An anomaly in property transfer records, suspicious financial transactions that were too perfectly obscured. Shell companies nested within shell companies, creating a labyrinth of financial misdirection. Willow Creek Estates was the linchpin. a suburban development that looked entirely ordinary on the surface. Middle-class professionals, retired individuals, work-from-home entrepreneurs, the perfect demographic to mask complex financial crimes. Elena pulled up a series of encrypted files. We're seeing connections now. The property transfers Karen photographed, they're linking to 3 separate shell companies we've been tracking for months. Each piece of data was a puzzle piece. Karen's amateur investigation was inadvertently providing the final connections they needed to move forward with a massive takedown operation. Initiate Protocol Suburban Storm, Marcus instructed. A series of digital dominoes began to fall. Communication logs were compiled. Financial trails were frozen. Surveillance networks were activated across multiple jurisdictions. The HOA president, who thought she was exposing a neighborhood rule breaker, was actually helping to dismantle one of the most sophisticated financial crime networks the DEA had encountered in years. Target acquired, Elena confirmed. Marcus allowed himself a slight smile. Sometimes the most unexpected players became the most critical assets in a complex investigation. Karen Henderson had just become that player, whether she knew it or not. The suburban battlefield was about to become a federal crime scene, and it all started with a simple HOA violation. The black SUVs arrived precisely at 10:17 a.m., their convoy cutting through the pristine streets of Willow Creek Estates like a surgical instrument. No sirens, no flashing lights, just pure, calculated precision. Karen Henderson was in her kitchen, still sorting through the photographs she'd taken from Marcus Rodriguez's office, when the first knock came. Not the gentle tap of a neighborhood friend, but the authoritative rap of federal agents. She opened the door to a scene that would forever shatter her carefully constructed world. 3 agents stood in sharp contrast to the manicured suburban landscape. Marcus Rodriguez in the center, flanked by 2 colleagues, a woman with piercing dark eyes and a man who looked like he could dismantle a cartel with a spreadsheet and a phone call. Karen Elizabeth Henderson, Marcus began, his voice a controlled storm. You are hereby served with federal documentation regarding multiple violations of privacy, potential obstruction of a federal investigation, and unauthorized entry of a secured property. The words hit her like physical blows. Behind the agents, neighbors began to emerge. Barbara Jensen from the HOA board, her mouth agape. Harold Whitmore, suddenly very interested in the pattern of his front lawn. Mrs. Peterson from 2 doors down, her curtains twitching with a lifetime of accumulated gossip. The documents Marcus handed her were thick, bound in official government red. Each page was a testament to her catastrophic mistake. Forensic analysis of the documents she'd photographed, detailed logs of her break-in, financial trails that connected her actions to a much larger investigation. How? Karen stammered, her carefully maintained composure crumbling. Agent Elena Ramirez stepped forward, her voice clinical and precise. The key you used to enter the property, obtained through improper channels. The documents you photographed, part of an ongoing federal investigation into a multi-state money laundering operation. The suburban street had become a theater of surreal drama, perfectly trimmed hedges, identical mailboxes, and now a federal takedown unfolding in real time. Marcus watched Karen's world collapse with the detached professionalism of someone who had seen far worse. Her HOA clipboard, her weapon of bureaucratic destruction, lay forgotten on the kitchen counter. The same clipboard that had documented countless violations now stood as a symbol of her own spectacular failure. The property transfers you discovered, Elena continued, are just the tip of an iceberg. Willow Creek Estates has been a sophisticated money laundering front for years. Your amateur investigation, while well-intentioned, was about to compromise an operation we've been building for months. The HOA board members who had once nodded at Karen's every pronouncement now looked at her with a mixture of horror and disbelief. The community's guardian had become its greatest liability. Harold Whitmore, the retired accountant who had helped her obtain the key, was already backing away. Barbara Jensen looked like she might faint. We'll need you to come with us, Marcus said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Your actions, while not intentionally criminal, have significant legal implications. Karen's world, built on municipal codes, HOA regulations, and a lifetime of maintaining perfect order, was being systematically dismantled. Each carefully maintained rule, each meticulously documented violation, now seemed laughably insignificant. As they walked her to the SUV, the neighborhood watched in stunned silence. The perfect suburban facade had been stripped away, revealing the complex, dangerous world that existed just beneath the surface of manicured lawns and synchronized sprinkler systems. Marcus Rodriguez had won, not through confrontation, but through patience, not through force, but through strategy. The suburban battlefield had claimed its most unexpected casualty. The federal courthouse in downtown was a study in architectural precision, clean lines, imposing marble, a temple of justice that seemed to rise above the city's chaotic streets. 6 months after Karen Henderson's ill-fated break-in, the final pieces of the Willow Creek Estates investigation were falling into place. Marcus Rodriguez sat in the back of the courtroom, his presence both a testament to the investigation and a quiet sentinel of justice. The case had grown far beyond a simple HOA dispute or even a local money laundering operation. 17 defendants sat before the court: real estate agents, property managers, financial consultants, a network of professionals who had transformed suburban real estate into a complex money laundering machine. Their crime was elegant in its simplicity: purchase properties slightly above market value, cycle money through shell companies, create the appearance of legitimate financial transactions. Karen Henderson was not among the primary defendants. Her role had been inadvertent, a well-intentioned but catastrophically misguided attempt to expose what she believed was suspicious behavior. Instead, she sat in the witness gallery, her once perfectly coiffed hair now streaked with gray, her HOA clipboard replaced by a subpoena. The lead prosecutor, a woman with steel in her eyes and precision in her words, methodically dismantled the defendant's network. Financial trails stretched across 3 states, connecting seemingly unrelated property transactions. What had appeared to be a local real estate scheme was actually a sophisticated national operation. These defendants, the prosecutor explained, her voice cutting through the courtroom like a scalpel, systematically exploited the trust inherent in suburban community development. They turned the American dream of homeownership into a mechanism for financial crime. Marcus watched the proceedings with a detached professionalism. This was more than just another case. This was a takedown that would reshape how federal agencies approach financial crimes and residential developments. During a recess, Alina Ramirez approached Marcus. "The data Karen accidentally photographed was the breakthrough we needed," she said quietly. "Sometimes the best intelligence comes from the most unexpected sources." That irony wasn't lost on either of them. The HOA president who had made Marcus's life miserable with violation notices had ultimately become the key to unraveling a multi-million-dollar criminal network. Outside the courthouse, media cameras captured the aftermath. Willow Creek Estates, once a symbol of suburban perfection, was now synonymous with financial corruption. Property values plummeted. Homeowners discovered their investments were built on a foundation of fraud. Karen Henderson's world had been completely dismantled. Her HOA presidency, her social standing, her entire sense of community leadership, all gone in a matter of months. The very rules and regulations she had used to torment her neighbors had become her own undoing. During her testimony, she spoke with a mixture of confusion and lingering righteousness. "I was just trying to maintain community standards," she insisted, her voice a whisper of her former authoritative tone. The judge, a woman with decades of experience, listened with a mixture of sympathy and stern judgment. Karen would face minimal legal consequences: a fine, community service, a stern warning. Her real punishment was the complete destruction of her carefully constructed social world. As the trial concluded, Marcus found a moment of quiet reflection. Investigations like these were never about a single moment of triumph. They were about patience, persistence, the ability to see connections where others saw only mundane suburban life. His ranch, the property that had been the center of so much conflict, stood as a testament to that philosophy. What appeared to be random landscaping was actually a carefully constructed operational base. What seemed like HOA violations were actually strategic intelligence gathering. The final judgment came down. Millions in assets seized, multiple defendants facing significant prison time. A complex financial crime network completely dismantled. Justice, Marcus realized, often comes from the most unexpected places, sometimes from a federal agent, sometimes from an overzealous HOA president, and sometimes from the perfect combination of both.